All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Brady, and this is my final project. So, my favorite power plant from Homework 3 was the Muskingum River plant. It's from around where I grew up. I grew up in South Zanesville. We talked about like the Big Muskie Bucket in class, and it's kind of down in that area, south of McConnellsville. So, it was founded in Beverly, Ohio in 1953, and it had a nameplate capacity of 1,529 megawatts. The plant had five separate units producing that much power. They were all mostly producing it from bituminous coal, um, but four of the five units were shut down in 2014. And Unit 5 was shut down in 2015 when the plant was officially retired. Unit 5 was originally supposed to be converted to a natural gas unit, but it ended up not working out. The company went under, and then American Electric Power took over. The plant has since been demolished, and now all that's left there is like the ash ponds and nothing else. The company did take over to hopefully try to build something there, but that's kind of where I wanted to come in. So my project to kind of gain that power back um, has multifaceted approach. So over on the right here is all my work. You can pause the video and check if you really want for the actual breakdown. I made it all colorful, but I need 1,529 megawatts through conservation through the city of Columbus with 3,6,200 homes. Um, I was looking at a 20% reduction. So to get the 6 kilowatt usage rate that we were given down to 4.8. And I'll talk more about that later when we get to like the challenges and kind of how I see that going through. But for solar, I have the number of megawatts produced is 998.4 during the day based on the information I was given. And then the number of acres would be 2,496. I did not include rooftops for solar, given that I'm in such a rural area. I didn't think it'd be very feasible. For onshore wind, I have 111.75 megawatts during the day, 357.6 at night, for a total number of turbines at 149. Offshore wind, I put this in the Great Lakes because it was within the mile boundary, and the Great Lakes, as we talked about in class, are a viable option for offshore wind turbines. Viable in most senses, as we talked about. There's some pushback, but I have the number of megawatts generated for that at 465 a day, 744 megawatts at night, for a total number of 93 turbines. So I decided to name this project the Big Muskie Renewable Energy Farm because, as I mentioned, it's kind of in the same area as the Big Muskie. It's kind of in the old stomping grounds and coal mine area. Um, but I marked the power plant. As you can see, it's this little blue marker on the solar farm, and then it's even tinier down here for my wind turbines. So the total megawatts from the previous plant, as I stated, were 1,529. With the conservation at 435 megawatts, I really need to just reach 1,094. For this, though, I did shoot for 1,529 so that the conservation wouldn't even be needed. So I was able to do that for the daytime with the solar. So as you can see, the solar, I had 3.9 square miles, which generated 998, as we talked about before. And then all of that added up with the onshore wind, 111, and the offshore wind, 465, gave me a total amount generated of 1,575.15 megawatts without even including conservation for the daytime. For the nighttime is where I really needed the conservation, as I could no longer rely on solar, which generated, I think, near 70% of my total, because onshore wind would only account for 355.8, and offshore wind would count for 1,099.8 megawatts. So with the conservation, the nighttime is able to work. Um, but as you can see in the bottom picture, that is a lot of land to cover for a wind farm. But we'll get to that when I get to the challenges as well. So, and I will add a nuclear reactor. It just makes sense given the project, and even when you think about it beyond the projects, beyond this assignment scopes, it makes sense. Um, Realistically, the nuclear reactor would be the best way to do it with how variable the wind is, especially in southeastern Ohio, and the variability of solar, and considering the nighttime. So the nuclear reactor will really help when the energy is less efficient and cut down on the number of inefficient onshore wind turbines. As I mentioned, the wind turbines in that area do meet the threshold as given by the assignment. However, they are basically at the threshold. So they're not exactly the most efficient and not the best usage for that land. Um, so with a nuclear reactor, only 16 onshore turbines would be needed. I decided to cut back on the onshore rather than the offshore because of efficiency. Um, and the two places I put the reactor, I'd either put the reactor across the river from where the original plant was. In that diagram, it's kind of like the wind farm area that's across the river. Or I could move the solar farm over to where the wind farm was. Both areas are flat, and I could put the nuclear reactor where the old plant was to kind of reuse that area. As I mentioned, in real life, they're trying to figure out some industrial use for that land. So the summary of my plan updated with nuclear is listed here. Um, so the megawatts produced during the day with nuclear is 1,575 because um, the amount of onshore wind taken off was about 100 megawatts. So I would only need to run the nuclear for an hour to reach the previous amount without even including conservation. Um, Even with conservation, I wouldn't even have to run the nuclear reactor during the day. We would reach enough with wind and solar. But for at night, I would need to run for a minimum of 4 hours since it's 100 megawatts per hour. And I need to reach the threshold of 1,094, the amount with conservation. Um, as I mentioned before, the conservation is really huge at night because of the reliance on solar my plan has. But there we go. Now I'll kind of talk about issues like that one. So the original power plant produced so much power that it would be highly improbable to rely solely on wind and solar, um, especially when you look at it night and day, even in the simple aspect like we were in class, because the plant was running continuously before, and 5 units all running off of coal produce a lot of continuous power. As I mentioned, in real life, would struggle without the addition of a nuclear reactor. And then the other major challenge or drawback I saw was that for the offshore wind energy, it's feasible, but there are a lot of turbines. There are 93 turbines, and those could all be spread out across the lake and still stay within my project radius. However, as we talked about in class, there's a huge pushback on that. Boating associations and people with lakefront houses, whatever, that would have a problem with it obstructing their view or causing problems, and you'd have to work around like the freight channels, and there'd be a lot of things to work around there. However, I do see it as probable, especially given the amount of space that there is. And then other kind of challenges, notes, and concerns that kind of popped up. It was really kind of difficult to find suitable space for the wind turbines. That area that I outlined in the previous slide was a pretty flat area. I was able to find an airfield and kind of work around that to kind of, um, look at the terrain. And Google Earth was really helpful with that. Plus, being from the area, I kind of know certain aspects of it. Um, and then I wanted to use the local region for the old plant and kind of the local region in general, rather than just put it somewhere else in Ohio, because um, for me, it was like I wanted to bring jobs back to the area if this was a real project that I was doing. Um, The other thing is with the local region, I could not do that for the conservation though. I had to do Columbus. I tried to do all the local, cities, but there just wasn't enough households. So I turned to Columbus because it had the population that would actually make a noticeable change for the conservation amount. And then finally, to get that energy conservation, um, I think the best route would be to use energy efficient appliances and education about things like turning lights off when they're not needed, about how you can run your AC and heating to be more efficient. Um, and I thought even having people inspect their homes or have people come in to inspect their homes to see if they have properly sealed windows and doors would be huge. A lot of energy is lost that way through heating and cooling. Cool air going out in the summer, losing heat in the winter. I know this firsthand because the window in my bedroom is very inefficient and I lose a lot of heat and cool out of it. Um, so that was kind of the first thing that came to mind. To kind of incentivize this, I think there could be different programs, whether that's like a trade-in on appliances to get those energy efficient ones um, for like a reduced price. Education about turning lights off and education in general is just kind of education. You can do that through, different facets. Social media would probably be easiest. And then for people getting their homes inspected, that could go with education as well, educating people on how to do it themselves, or additionally offering some kind of reduced price to have professionals come in and do it. And then each house does not have to do each part of that plan. It'd kind of be like a pick and choose, but they can each opt in, and that would help me bring down their usage by 1.2 kilowatts, which, um, when looking at it through the scope of the project, is not a lot, but um, for the conservation efforts, that's what I need to reach that 20%. So that's all I have. Thank you for listening to me, and I hope you guys enjoyed my project. There's a link below this video in the discussion board to my previous discussion board in the coal plan if you want to learn more about that. Thank you.